Morning. As we go to the Chitas of today, we're holding today is Tuesday, the third reading in the portion of Vayigash. Holding chapter 45, verse number 8. And now, Le'atam shlachtem Oisi Heina, you are not. You did not send me here. Ki Halakim, but God has sent me here. And he's put me as a Lord, the Father, to Pharaoh, and to a ruler over his whole entire house. And a ruler over the entire Egypt. Now she says, what's the meaning of a father, a colleague, protector? Your mom out of Allah, therefore hurry up. Go up to our father. We should tell him, is what my son Yosef said. The Eibishter made me a ruler, as a king, to the land of Egypt. Come down to me, Al-Tami, don't tarry, don't waste time. Now says go up to the land of Israel, meaning go up, because Israel is spiritually higher than any other land. Shafta Beretz Goshen, you'll live in the land of Goshen. The Yisakar of Eli, you'll be close to me. After you, Vanech and your sons, Vanei Vanech and the sons, your sons, will be close to me. And all your flock and your cattle. Everything that belongs to you should come here. Verse 11, and I will sustain you there. Because there's another 5 years of famine. You may become impoverished. You and your family. Rashi is what means tivarish, impoverished. Rashi translates the uncles, translates you become impoverished, and that's why they say it over here, the word impoverished. Verse number 12. And behold your eyes, I see, as well as the eyes of my son of my brother Binyamin. Because that you see, that's my mouth speaking to you. Now she says, your eyes see. What does your eyes see? My glory. And that I'm your brother, for I am circumcised like you. And moreover, that is my mouth is speaking to you in the Hebrew. I'm speaking to you in Lashon Kodesh. So now she says, over here we compared them all together, saying, just like I harbor no harm against Binyamin, who's my brother. He didn't do anything against me. He didn't participate in selling me. Neither do I have a hatred against you. God tell love, you should go up to my father's called Kavedi, all my glory. Mitzrayim in the land of Egypt. It's called Ashari Isem, and everything that you have seen. Hurry up and bring our father down here. Verse 14, and he fell on his brother's neck. And he cried. And Binyamin wept on his neck. Now says, why did they cry on each other's neck? Over here was symbolic to the two sanctuaries, which will be destined to be on Binyamin's territory and ultimately destroyed. And Binyamin wept on his neck was the tabernacle of Shiloh, which is destined to be on Yosef's territory and would ultimately be destroyed. They were crying over the destruction of the temple. Verse 15. He kissed all his brothers and cried at them too. And then after that, his brother spoke to him. Hashem continued to kiss them Cain, after he saw him weeping, that he was wholehearted with them, where previously they felt ashamed before him. And then suddenly a voice went out throughout all the household of Pharaoh, and they heard that the brothers of Joseph came. And was pleased. Now found out who he was in the eyes of his servants. And Pari said to Yosef, tell your brother, Zaisatu, this is what you do. Tanis birichem, load up your beast and go. Go quickly back to the land of Canaan. Take grain back to the land of Canaan. Verse 18, take your father and all your household. Boy alike, come to me. I invite you all to come live here. I'll give you the best land of Egypt. You'll eat the fat of the land. Asher Tuv, which was the best land, was Goshen. That is Goshen. He prophesied, but did not know what he's prophesying, because ultimately the Jews will make Egypt like a depth of the sea which has no fish. They will empty out the land. Chaylev haaretz. Whenever it says chaylev, in general, whenever it says chaylev, which means the fat of the land, it means the best of the land. Verse 19. This is what Yosef had been commanded to tell them. Take yourself wagons for the land of Egypt, because you're going to need a lot of wagons to bring back down all your family. For your children, and the Shechem, to your wives, and the Sasem as Avichem, and carry your father, Ubasem, and come to this land. By me to say to them, Zaisasu, so you shall say to them, this is my power to provide to you all this, to bring you to send you also the capability to bring you down to the land of Egypt. Verse 20, and let your eyes not be concerned about your utensils. For the entire land is for you, it's good for you. Verse 21, and this is what the Jewish people did. Yosef gave him wagons. On the mouth of Pari, border of Pari. He gave him also food for the way. And he gave them all several changes of clothes. And to Binyamin he gave 300 pieces of silver. 5 changes of clothes. To his father he sent the following. Asar made him 10 donkeys. Naisim, which carrying the best of Egypt. Vasar Asenis and 10 donkeys. Noises bar, carrying grain, lechem and bread, umazin and other foods, la'aviv laderech, for his father in his journey. Rashi says, Kecheshma hazeh, what's the cheshbon as he says? Metub Mitzrayim, we find the Gemara said he sent him aged wine. Because elderly people find contentment in it. The fact that the wine improves with age often affords contentment to the elderly, the Gemara says. According to the Agada, however, this refers to the pounded beer and beans, which was soothing effect on troubling spirits. Sent him certain herbs, bar, valechem, Targum says, umazain, things eaten with bread. Verse 24, he sent his brothers, and they went. He said to them, do not quarrel on the way. What does that mean? The simple meaning is, do not engage in halachic discussions, at least the way cause you to stray. Another expression, do not walk with large steps and enter the city while the sun is shining. According to the simple meaning of the verse, we can say that since they were ashamed, Joseph, was concerned, they would perhaps quarrel on the way about being sold, debating with one another, saying because of you he was sold, we slandered him and caused him to hate him. So therefore, he said, don't argue, don't worry. There's nothing to argue about. Everybody's happy. I'm happy. You should be happy. And there's nothing to worry. They went up to Mitzrayim. They came to the land of Canaan, to Yaakov the father. Verse 26, when they told him, saying, Yosef is still alive. He's not only alive, he's the ruler of the entire land of Egypt. And his heart changed. Because he did not believe them. She says, and he's ruler, his heart changed. His heart changed and went away from believing. His heart did not turn to believe them, these words. Similar to the taste of change. So he just Pashat was moved to disbelief. I love us. Then they told him the words of Yosef, which he spoke to them. And then he saw the wagons, which Jesus sent. Lost is to carry him. Ruach Yaakov. The spirit of Yaakov was revived. It's called Yosef. Yosef gave them a sign in which topics he was engaged with Joseph separately when he separated himself. So Yosef told his brothers, this is the learning of Torah he talked to them about. There was a section dealing with the red heifer, which was the heifer which was beheaded, Eglah Rufa. That if you don't change a donkey to a seh, you have to, so to say, decapitate the donkey. And this is the scripture says, and he saw the wagons that he sent. It doesn't say the Pharaoh sent, he saw the wagons, Eglah Rufa. So the word is Eglah. He saw that he sent them a sign. I left you when you were learning with me the laws of a Eglah Rufa, that again you have to, the Torah tells you that the first of a donkey you have to change, you have to give to the Beis Hamikdash. Peter, Chamer, that the first of a donkey you have to give it to the Kohen. The only way you can keep it is by giving a sheep. Still being done in Eretz, they do this mitzvah, Eglah Rufa. Peter Echem, really. If you don't do it, you have to do Eglah Rufa. The Torah says you have to decapitate the donkey. So Yosef and Yaakov were learning this prior to the story. As they were learning, he told them to go visit his brothers. So now when he sent his wagon, which is the word Eglah, so Yaakov Avinu saw, wow, Yosef HaTzadik remembered something we learned together 22 years ago. And now, the Shekhinah, which has separated from him because of his grief, rested upon him once again. When he saw that his son can still remember Torah that they learned together 22 years ago, self-understood, that made Yaakov happy. The presence of God came together with him. And that finishes the Chumash of the day. We now go to the Tanya of the day. Holding still in the 6th chapter of Tanya. Now, Alter Rebbe is explaining the concept of Klippa, the aspect of the negative in this world, and what means negative. The Alter Rebbe explained means the concept of the opposite of holiness. That's what's the meaning of a klippa. That's the meaning of something that's a sitra achra, the other side. So there's two sides. There's a side of holiness and a side of unholiness. We see in the way we call the week and Shabbos. Shabbos is called Kodesh, holy, and the weekday is called Chol. Chol means mundane, unholy. Now, self-understood, the obligation of a person is to make the weekday holy, to be able to take the mundaneness and make it holy. If I don't do that, I leave it in a state of unholiness. Then you shouldn't think that you have done nothing negative. But actually, if I have not created a concept of holiness, then basically it's unholy. and it becomes a klippa, it becomes a sitra achra, it becomes the opposite side, so to say, and it can create negative things in the world. And that's why the Alter Rebbe says this is why this world and all that it contains is called world of klippa and sitra achra. Despite the fact that this world too receives its vitality from godliness and holiness. But nevertheless, it's all klippas because it's receiving its holiness from Achlayim de Kedusha. It's receiving its holiness from the backside of Kedusha. Since the creatures of this physical world feel themselves to be independent, separate beings, and their surrender to godliness is not apparent. It's chayil. It's unholy. They automatically belong to the realm of klippa. And you might think, wow, it's so terrible about that. That's why all the fears of this world is severe and evil. And that's why the $1 million question that is asked in the Gemara, why do the wicked prosper and the righteous suffer? Because we're living in the world of klippas. We're living in a world of sitra achra. We are living in a dark world where seemingly the wicked prosper. And the negative seemingly is more bigger and greater and stronger than the positive. As is written in Eitz Chaim, Eitz Chaim, as written in Kabbalah, Shar Mem Beis, 442, saved dollar. So in the following note, referring to his previous statement that this world is klippas, the Alter Rebbe writes that this is notwithstanding the fact that godliness pervades all existence, or stated in terminology Kabbalah, that God's infinite light clothes itself in spheres of all four worlds. So the Eibishter is here. There's no hiddenness. There's no tzimtzum, klippas. By God, there's nothing. Everything is an expression of Him. So even this physical world filled with Oid Ein Sof, despite all this, still a world of klippas. The Eibishter can handle opposites. God can be in a place of impurity. That's why it says, the Eibishter is like a fire. Fire cannot become impure. So, to be sure, this world contains the 10 spheres of the world of Asiyah. Don't think, Has v'shalom, that even though this world is terrible, it has within it Oid Ein Sof. In this world, in the world of Asiyah, in the most darkest places of the world, the Eibishter is found there, as He's found in the high holiest places of the world. So in the world of Asiyah, comprised both of our physical world and the spiritual world of Asiyah, the spheres of the spiritual Asiyah are, however, contained in the physical Asiyah as well. And in these 10 spheres of Asiyah is found within it the 10 spheres of Yitzirah. In the 10 spheres of Yitzirah is found within it the 10 spheres of Bria. In that is found within it the 10 spheres of Tzilas. And ultimately within all of these things is the infinite light of God. So God's infinity is found here as it's found above. So therefore, what is the emes? What is the truth? So the truth is, there's an infinite light of God in the lowest world. Through Oid Ein Sof, coming into the 10 spheres of the world of emanation, that comes into the 10 spheres of the world of creation, that comes into the 10 spheres of the world of formation, that comes into the 10 spheres of the spiritual world of action. that ultimately comes into this world. Tzilus b'li yitzirasi. As written in Kabbalah in Eitz Chaim, Shai Mem Zayin, Portal 47, paid to the chapter 2, the Sefer Gilgulim, in the book of Gilgulim, paid chapter 20. So yet, because creatures of this world and I openly surrender to God, this world is a klippa and sitrach. So until here, as we explained, that all thoughts and utterance and action that are not directed towards holiness are sitrach, and that these are garments in which the animal soul expresses itself. So therefore, the more I surround myself with unholiness, the more I become mundane. That's it. And again, we're not talking about even sin. The more I become mundane, the more not only I become mundane, I have a less connection to true spirituality, to the true meaning of spirituality, which is humility, selflessness, giving myself over to God. But these merely place the garment on a par with the animal soul itself, which like them stems from sitrach. It was explained earlier, however, that these garments of the divine soul are the higher spiritual level than the soul itself, and elevated. And the animal soul is structured as a mirror image of divine soul. It follows then that the animal soul's garments are even lower than that of the animal soul itself as they degrade it. And now the Alter Rebbe comes and tells you, thus, like in the spiritual soul, its garments are higher than the soul itself. So it's the opposite when it comes to the animal soul. The animal soul, ultimately, if I garment it, if I give it thought, speech, and action, so my actions are lower than the animal soul itself. Because I'm diminishing the animal soul. The animal soul that God gave me is a no man's land. It could actually be elevated. I could take the animal soul, all its powers of thought, speech, and action. No, I'm sorry, all its powers of wisdom and all the wisdom of the animal soul, all the emotions of the animal soul. And let's say I clothe it with kedusha. Because ultimately when I speak, when I learn, when I daven, when I do a good deed, I'm doing it with my physical body. So that's my animal soul. So therefore, if I clothe it with kedusha, I elevate my animal soul. I take the powers of my animal soul. I take the powers of my food, which is my animal soul. I take the strength of my animal soul. I malbish it in kedusha. I clothe it in a holy concept. And thereby, not only do I elevate the godly soul, I elevate the animal soul. And that's really elevating my spiritual soul is what was given to me. Elevating my animal soul is my true own self service in this world. That's my free choice, that I can elevate my animal soul. Chas v'shalom, I can take an animal soul that has the capacity and the capability, and that was its purpose, to bring it into a higher level, and now I've diminished it. So that means my thought is worse than my animal soul. Because my evil thought is, my animal soul has elevation. My evil thought demined my animal soul. It actually diminished my animal soul. So ultimately, my act is worse. My levush, whether it's in thought, speech, and action, my levush itself is worse than the animal soul itself. And that's why ultimately my choice could be to be holier or to be worse than what I am in a natural sense. The Eibishter gave me an animal soul. Let's take a child. So that's why a child, till he's 13, is not responsible for his action, because that's his nature. He's not, even if he does a negative thing, he cannot be responsible for his act. But then I don't ultimately educate myself that by the time I'm 13, that I'll be able to understand that even though naturally I'm selfish, that's my nature. That's not a negative thing. Selfish is not per se a negative thing. But now that I come by mitzvah, I've not learned the concept of becoming a little bit selfless and having humility. Now I've taken something and now I've become mature and responsible to ultimately do something worse than my nature. The Rebbe goes on to explain that indeed that's the case. After discussing the two categories of klip mentioned in the introduction of this chapter, he concludes that those garments of the animal soul that drag down the soul from the level of klippas noiga, the soul's natural state, to the level of three completely impure klippas. These are sinful thoughts and forbidden words in action. That's what ultimately I can do. Through my not taking my animal soul and elevating it, I'm going to ultimately bring it down. And I'm not only thinking about nothing, I'm going to start thinking about evil things. Because as we come older, I take the concept of my thought and I start having not stam machshavas, regular thoughts. I have machshavas rois. I have evil thoughts. And now I've diminished the natural soul. The natural is nature, is natural. It should be elevated. It should be brought up to a higher level. And if I don't do that, if I don't learn how to bring it up to a deeper level, that I should elevate it, put on the clothes, the garments of good, think only good, think godly things, and therefore I'll only think even good things. But if I don't elevate it, I'm going to ultimately bring it down to machshavas rois, to have not godly thought, not even regular thought. I'm going to bring it down to evil thought. And that's its natural progression. That's the way it is. That's the way naturally it is. So therefore, I have to constantly, even after I'm bar mitzvah, and it doesn't matter what age I am, I have to constantly train my thought to bring it to spiritual thought. And what happens if I continue to fight to have spiritual thought? Then I will never come down to negative thought. I'll have maybe mundane thought because I'm still not a tzaddik. So I will have mundane thought, which is not holy, but it's not evil. So I haven't yet gone down to diminish it. But if I don't practice on a constant basis to have spiritual thought, then ultimately my mundane thought will go down. So that's why you learn Mailim B'Kodesh. But as a Jew, we always have to go higher in spirituality, because if not, you cannot say I'm going to stay in the middle. Because ultimately, my mundane thought, which is my natural thought, will slip down to evil thought. Will come down to evil thought. And now I've gone from klippa, from a cover that shines, to a klippas hatmeis. And that's how we slip into evil klippas hatmeis. It doesn't go from holy to unholy. It goes from holy to mundane to unholy. And I need to basically learn how to constantly go holier. And therefore, I'll always have the holy and the mundane, not the unholy. But as we learn that klippa is divided in two categories. Kedusha is no such thing. Kedusha is kedusha. Holiness is holiness. Self-understood. You can have my thought of holiness and a tzaddik's thought of holiness is self-understood in holiness, but ultimately holiness is holiness. Godliness is godliness. So Ben Chana, like in the pasuk, a Ben Chamash Mikra learns a pasuk, reads a pasuk in the Torah. He reads the pasuk in the Torah. A Talmud Chacham, a great sage, he's reading the same pasuk in the Torah, sees another dimension. But they're both holy. They're both godly. What's the difference? Can we make a difference in the concept of holiness? You can't make a difference. There's a greatness in the sage, and the Gemara says the greatness of a child that is saying a pasuk, Hevel she'ein bechet. It's the words of that has no sin. So there's a greatness of a child saying the pasuk, because they're both saying holiness. And how can we make a degrees of what's greater in holiness and what's lesser in holiness? But when it comes to klippa, when it comes to impurities, there are levels. There's the level, as I said, klippas noiga, as the Alter Rebbe says, you have a klippa that shines, meaning it's a covering, it's unholy, it's nothing there, it's empty vat, but it's not on something that's negative. And then you have shalosh klippas atmeis. Adrega teine shalosh klippas atmeis. Lower category Kabbalah says there are three completely evil klippas, and they have no good. Some people say, why you have three levels? Because you have Shava Dibur Maisa. Three levels of impurity. There can be impure thoughts, no good, what's a machshava rois, evil thoughts. You can have evil speech, and you can have evil action. And that is and in the prophet Ezekiel vision, he describes the forces of concealed godliness. They are described as a storm wind, a great cloud, a flaring fire, representing these three holy unclean clips. Mehem nishbois nefashis kolo masem v'kiyum gufen. And from them flow and derive the souls of the nations of the world and sustaining forces of their bodies, which sustain their existence. Apart from that soul, which animates them. And from them derive, from these clippers, derive the souls of all living creatures that are unclean and forbidden to eat. V'kiyum gufam, and the existence of their bodies. V'kiyum chayis kol macholos asuros, in the existence of all forbidden vegetations. As for example, the trees of a year, first 3 years, where does existence come from? Klippas Tameis. Klaya Kerem, the mixture of grain seed with vineyard, which as is brought down in Eitz Chaim Shalmem Tes. Now you have certain things that come in Hashamayim the first 3 years that the fruits are unkosher. You're not allowed to eat it because it comes from Shalosh Klippas Tameis. Then you have certain things that a person does. He mixes the seed, Klaya Kerem. He mixes the vineyard with the wheat, and that creates Shalosh Klippas Tameis. So to a person, the life force existence of any act, utterance, or thought in the violation of any 365 biblical prohibitions, and their rabbinical offshoots. As is brought down, some say Peter K, as brought down in the Kabbalah there in chapter 5. So the animal soul, on the other hand, is a klippas noiga. We should realize that the difference. Our animal soul comes from klippas noiga, which contains elements of good. I'd mentioned in chapter 1. The sinful garments belonging to the realm of unholy, impure klippas are thus lower than the animal soul itself, and drag it down to their level. So we can simply, that's a very important thing to us, to a Beinoni, to realize that we have a natural, Alter Rebbe is building something over here that will ultimately bring out later, but he's building a foundation especially to a middle person that has an animal soul, that he shouldn't think his animal soul is evil. It's not true. My animal soul is not evil. And the proof is that every child is not evil. My animal soul is pure, like my godly soul. It's such as a natural disposition. The Eibishter gave me certain natural tendencies. And these natural tendencies of ego, of self-worth, of selfishness, these can be natural tendencies like kina, taiva, v'akovet. Kina, jealousy, taiva, desires, covet, self-worth. These are natural tendencies of your animal soul. They all, pasha, can be great things. If we didn't have jealousy of others' learnings and others, we would never want to learn more. If we didn't have self-worth, it would be terrible things. If we didn't have certain desires of good things with each other, desires in the family, desire in godliness, we wouldn't have any desires. These are all natural things that the Eibush to put into the existence of every single one of us. Then we start taking our natural tendencies and we start think everything starts with machshava. We start to think negative. Your animal soul is screaming, leave me alone. Why would I want to think negative? I'm not interested in negative. I'm just interested in self. That's not negative. I'm not interested in thinking negative about somebody else. What do I gain out of thinking negative about somebody else? What do I gain out of talking negative about somebody else? You think I gain. That's what I think I gain out of talking something negative or something. That's an illusion. That's not a reality. And even your animal soul understand that that's not a reality. That's not there's no purpose in any negative thought. There's no purpose in any negative speech. There's no purpose, no gain in any negative action. Actually, it brings the opposite of life. So why would my animal soul want the opposite of life? My animal soul actually is the soul that wants to live. My godly soul wants to return to its source. My animal soul sees the greatness of life, sees the beauty of life, and therefore it wants to live. And it understands ultimately that any negative thing will diminish its life. So that's why on Yom Kippur we bang our heart that we say, we schlepped ourselves to the Yetzer. We schlepped this natural soul to something evil. That ultimately says that my free choice in my thought and in my speech and my action is worse than my animal soul. I've diminished my basic nefesh habahamis, which could have been used for good, and I've used it for bad. So why am I blaming myself? I should never blame myself. I should never blame I shouldn't blame my animal soul. I should blame my free choice. Which ultimately, if I understand what I just said, I'm blaming my free choice, then I'm blaming the true entity that I have to fix. And that's why it's important to realize this concept, because ultimately I can change it. That's why the Alter Rebbe says that these are called levushim. These are called garments. Because just like I can change my holy garments to get holier, so too I can change these garments. I can start pasha thinking good. Nobody can force me to think negative. I can start speaking good, and I can surely start doing good. And the more I start thinking good and speaking good and ultimately doing good, I'll never come even to a concept of doing something negative. And that's a beautiful concept that the Alter Rebbe is going to bring out even more in the aspect of why, as a Beinoni, I need to push it, always try to think in Yonah Kedusha. I need to push it constantly, start off my day in Yonah Kedusha. In the Yonah, in things of holiness, to push it, train my mind to first think holy things. And by thinking holy things, and by saying holy things, ultimately, maybe I will slip into the mundane, which I am. I'm going to slip back into the mundane, but I'm going to keep it in the mundane world because I'm always going to connect it. Maybe, wait, I cannot go further than that. I cannot go further. Why? Because I'm supposed to be holy. And chas v'shalom, not to clothe myself, not to go to the next level, to clothe myself in a pashut and on a holy concept. To start thinking negative things. So if I train myself in my mind as a yid, as a human being, to think holy concepts. So why will I think negative concepts? I would never come to it. I'm a holy person. I think only good. The second something unholy will come, I'll push it away right away. That's why the Alter Rebbe is in Spain, a middleman. Not that he's not capable of thinking negative. He is, because since he can think mundane, he can think negative. The second he can think mundane, he can think negative. See, a tzaddik can never even think mundane. Now you understand why a tzaddik can never think even unholiness, because he doesn't think mundane either. He sees the world as a holy thing. He contemplates the world. By him, the whole world in his mind is holiness. He sees godliness in everything. So he's impossible to think a negative thing, because he can't even go to the realm of mundaneness. He can't even go to the realm. But we could go to the realm of mundaneness. We could go to the middle realm, to our natural state. And since we can go to our natural state, we can easily slip into the unholy state, into the negative state. And therefore, it's a malchama. Therefore, the Alter Rebbe is say to us, middle people, it's going to be a constant battle, because our battle is to always keep it holy, to always try to keep it holy. Why? And not keep it in the middle, because we know the second we leave it in the middle, we can clothe ourselves with the negative. We can go to the next step of thinking negativity, of saying negativity. If I connect myself over to the holy part and I push myself from the mundane to the holy, and this is a machama, that's the battle, to be able to mavda ben kodesh l'chayil, to be able to bring it always to the holy part. I'll be able to not slip in to the negative, to the Yetzer Hara, to ultimately not only think nothing, but actually to start thinking negative. Or chas v'shalom, start saying negative. And that's the struggle that I am in as a human being. So an exact opposition of divine soul garments of thought, speech, and the action of Torah mitzvahs, which are higher than the soul and elevated, I clothe my soul in something lower than it. God forbid, if I think a negative thing, now I've diminished my natural soul, which is klippas noiga, which is also a klippa, because it's not holy, it's mundane. But I brought it down to klippas tameis. I brought it down to tummy. So now, what have I done? My mind has been clouded with impurity. That's why it said before, it's like there's like a cloud in my mind. I've clouded my mind. And that's why you also have the klippa, the impurity of the heart. I've become the dullness of the heart. Alter Rebbe calls tumas halev, the dullness of the heart. The more impurity I bring into my heart, I start loving things that are not pure, that are not holy. But I love it for its mundaneness. I love it for its impurity. I become impure in the heart. And I become dullness of the heart. It's like a covering of the heart. And the heart becomes dull. So how is it possible for me to have kedusha, holiness, when I've garments of impurity, when I've clouded my brain and clouded my heart and clouded my actions with impurity? It will be very difficult to me to be able to uplift myself and to be able to ultimately do davar shebekdusha, a holy concept. And therefore, again, I believe the Alter Rebbe just told us over here a very important thing. The Alter Rebbe taught us something very important, that these three things, we have kedusha, then we have the middle, which is klippas noiga. It's a covering, it's mundane, it's choil, but it's not unholy. It's choil. And now I need to keep it that way. I need to actually not keep it that. I need to bring it to kodesh. I need to try to push it to the holy side, because if not, if I just let it there, it's ultimately going to slip into the klippas hatmeis. It's ultimately going to slip into the three garments of unholiness, of thought, speech, and action, which I never ultimately, that's the fight, never. I'm trying to have the struggle, never to think, speak, do something that is negative, something that is not holy. And that's what I need to focus my life on. And that's what I need to ultimately overcome as a middle person. And that's the Muhammad. And the Alter Rebbe is going to tell us, as he builds this foundation to the Avodah of Abeinoni, as we come ultimately to understand what Abeinoni is, which is the Alter Rebbe, the whole Tanya, is to understand who I am and why I have these struggles. And actually, I should be, as the Alter Rebbe is going to say, I should be happy with these struggles because that's my Avodah in this world. So therefore, that's my service. So and everybody knows what the struggle is in thought, speech, and action. Surely in thought, everybody knows why they ultimately, Alter Rebbe is going to tell you why ultimately we do things what we do, because it's the way we think. And we need to start thinking different. We need to try to train our thought in Kedusha. If we can train our thought in Kedusha, in holiness, we will never come to unholiness. So that's preventive medicine. The Rebbe was always into preventive medicine. Instead of having medicine, if you get sick, why don't you prevent the situation? And therefore, the Alter Rebbe is going to teach us how to prevent situations. Because if you're not going to do preventive medicine, then you're going to have to do for medicine after the sickness. And you're going to get sick, spiritual sickness. And why would you come to spiritual sickness if we can partially prevent situation from beginning? Beautiful lesson in Tanya. Today is the 7th day of the month, which in Tehillim is chapter 39 to chapter 43. If you do those 5 chapters, you do the chitas of the day. Surround yourself with Kedusha. And hopefully the chitas of the day will protect us from all negative thought, speech, and action. And as our journey, as we go into the day, the regular day. I wish you all a wonderful day, a happy day, a healthy day. I'll see you all tomorrow, Mitzvah, 8 o'clock. We'll continue to learn the chitas of the day.